After moving out and buying my place, the strain on my family relationships intensified when they insisted that the house should be handed over to my sister. They even took legal action, which they lost, leaving them saddled with a $25,000 debt. This situation has lingered in my thoughts, making me question whether I need advice or just a space to express my feelings. Throughout my life, I felt a lack of love for my family. My sister Victoria, who is 4 years younger, has always been the favored one, exacerbating our already strained relationship. From my earliest memories, it seemed like my parents placed Victoria at the center of their universe, treating her as the golden child, while I felt like an outsider. This pattern of favoritism was evident in many family events, including last Christmas. Victoria received a brand new PlayStation 4, something I had longed for, while I received only a pair of plain white socks from Walmart. It wasn't just about the socks. It was about feeling overlooked as Victoria joyously opened gift after gift. This wasn't an isolated incident. My family rarely remembers my birthday. The last time they celebrated it, I was 9. In contrast, Victoria's 18th birthday was an extravagant affair with a lavish party, complete with a trampoline, entertainers, and professional catering. I wasn't even invited and only found out about the party the day before. Despite these challenges, I've always excelled academically, stayed out of trouble, and tried to meet my family's expectations. However, the emotional gap has only grown. Now, as I spend my birthdays with college friends, there's a small, celebratory atmosphere, but it starkly differs from a family celebration. Each year, as Victoria's elaborate birthdays highlight what I miss, I'm reminded of the stark contrast to my own experiences, reinforcing a deep-seated feeling of being undervalued. The pain runs deeper than just receiving fewer presents. It's about feeling perpetually sidelined and unseen, despite my efforts to belong and contribute positively to my family. Though I've come to realize that my sister Victoria was born with a magnetic personality that naturally attracted others, her arrival marked a significant shift in my family dynamics. She was outgoing, athletic, and had a knack for making friends, qualities that stood in stark contrast to my own. My parents were overjoyed when she was born, and I initially thought we would become close siblings, bonding over video games and shared interests as portrayed in movies. However, it soon became clear that Victoria preferred the company of her sporty friends over any relationship with me, leaving me feeling neglected and forgotten. As the years passed, my resentment towards Victoria grew. While I initially believed it wasn't her fault, I couldn't help but notice how she began to wield her influence over our parents, who seemingly excused her every mistake. For instance, when she accidentally broke the TV while her friends were over, she blamed it on me. Despite my absence during the incident, my parents took her side without hesitation, grounding me for a month and confiscating my phone. Feeling criminalized by my own family, I retreated into solitude, spending most of my time either in my room or at friends' houses. My own space felt suffocatingly small compared to Victoria's room, which was adorned with the latest gadgets and sports memorabilia. It seemed she had her own little empire, while I was just a shadow within our home. My 20th birthday came and went without any acknowledgement from my family. That morning, life at home carried on as usual with no one pausing to wish me a happy birthday. This profound sense of invisibility cemented my realization that nothing was going to change. Victoria had monopolized our parents' affection. This realization led me to distance myself from my family. I moved out as soon as I could, sharing a place with university friends. The distance brought a sense of liberation. To support myself, I turned to freelancing in graphic design. It started as a means to get by, but I soon found myself immersed in bigger projects, working tirelessly to carve out my own path of success, independent of my family. At 25, my life took a positive turn when I met Logan. He was everything I admired: intelligent, ambitious, and kind-hearted. Like me, he was a freelancer, managing social media for businesses. We clicked immediately, finding synergy in our work and personal lives. Logan was the first person who made me feel seen and valued for who I am, not just for what I could offer. His understanding and love were genuine, providing a stark contrast to the familial affection I had always craved but never received. Through him, I learned that being part of a family isn't just about blood relations, but about mutual respect and understanding. Logan's affection for me was genuine, rooted not in obligation but in real emotions. As our careers flourished, we began envisioning a shared future. After a year of dating, we decided to move in together, and soon after, we started planning to buy a home. We weren't looking for just any house. We wanted something special. Eventually, we found a sprawling 3-story house in the suburbs. It was a bit pricey, but together with our savings and combined income, we could afford it. The day we signed the contract and became the official homeowners was a joyous milestone. It was the culmination of our hard work and partnership. For days after moving in, my phone started buzzing with calls from my family. Since I had moved out, we had barely spoken, and I had been avoiding their calls due to the awkwardness between us. However, the persistent ringing eventually wore me down, and I answered. To my surprise, they were in town and wanted to visit our new home. Reluctantly, I agreed, thinking it best to face this encounter head-on rather than continue avoiding them. A few hours later, my parents and Victoria showed up at our doorstep, accompanied by a man I'd never seen before. Things quickly took an unexpected turn when I found out the man was Victoria's fiancé, Jameson, and that Victoria was pregnant. I was shocked. No one had informed me of her engagement or pregnancy. As they entered our home, the atmosphere grew tense. My mother attempted small talk with Logan, but the underlying discomfort was palpable. Suddenly, my father, with a dismissive tone, commented on the house, suggesting that he didn't think I could afford such a place. Despite the provocation, I chose not to engage, hoping to keep the peace. However, the situation escalated when my father, with a sense of entitlement, suggested that Victoria and Jameson should move into our house to accommodate their growing family. He argued that the house was too big for just Logan and me and that Victoria and Jameson needed the space more to raise their child. I was dumbfounded by his audacity to dictate what should happen to our home. The room fell silent as I absorbed the weight of his words. The suggestion that we should just step aside for Victoria's new family was too much to bear. Years of built-up resentment came to the surface. I firmly asserted that the house belonged to Logan and me, stressing that it was legally in our names and no one else had the right to make decisions about it. Victoria, smirking, interjected, questioning our need for such a large house. That was the last straw. I confronted them, expressing my long-repressed anger and frustration. I declared that I was done letting them impose their will on my life. This house was our sanctuary, our achievement, and I was not going to let it be claimed by anyone else. The confrontation marked a turning point for me. I realized the importance of setting boundaries with my family to protect my happiness and peace. This was more than just about a house. It was about claiming my independence and refusing to be overshadowed or underestimated any longer. My father's aggressive stance escalated as he stood, puffed out his chest, and berated me haughtily, arguing that I should be grateful and implying it was shameful to live in a house beyond my means. He insisted that if we gave the house to Victoria, she wouldn't have to feel the financial strain and boldly declared that it was inevitable the house would become hers. Shocked and enraged by his entitlement, I lost control. In a flash of anger, I lunged at him, pinning him against the wall, and demanded he leave our home immediately. Logan tried to intervene and calm the situation, but the years of pent-up frustration and anger boiled over. My father pushed back, and soon we were physically fighting, our shouts filling the air as my mother and Victoria screamed in the background. Jameson, caught off guard, made a frantic phone call, likely to the police. The situation spiraled further when the police arrived, breaking up the fight and handcuffing both my father and me. They escorted us to a police car. I was stunned. Never in my wildest dreams had I expected a family visit to culminate in a physical altercation and a ride in a police car. Hours later, Logan posted my bail, but the emotional and relational damage was severe. The chaos didn't end with the police visit. My father, driven by cunning and desperation, decided to legally challenge me for the ownership of the house. He argued that Victoria and Jameson needed it more, taking the dispute to court. I was shocked by his audacity, but prepared to defend my rights vigorously. I hired a lawyer and gathered all necessary documents proving the house was legally mine. I also decided it was time to bring to light the mental and psychological abuse I had endured for years. I collected evidence including emails, text messages, and testimonies from friends who had witnessed my parents' behavior towards me. In court, my lawyer presented not only the legal evidence, but also the pattern of neglect and abuse I had faced. The trial was grueling, with my father portraying himself as a caring parent, while Victoria and Jameson played the victims, pleading their need for the house for their upcoming child. However, their attempts to label me as selfish failed. After several months, the verdict was announced in my favor, and the court additionally ordered my father to pay $210,000 in damages for the mental and psychological harm caused. For the first time in my life, I felt that justice was truly on my side. Following the judgment, I made the difficult decision to cut off all contact with my parents and Victoria. The years of manipulation and favoritism were too much to bear any longer. Logan and I were free to start anew, truly making the house our own and beginning to build a life together free from family strife. Though the scars from the past hadn't fully healed, we were on a path to recovery. Now, as I reflect on those turbulent times, it's hard to believe how much my parents had tried to deceive and manipulate me. It's been 2 years since that ordeal, and before I delve further into our ongoing journey, let me share about our wedding, which took place just before the court case concluded. It was the happiest day of my life and solidified my decision to marry Logan, who had stood by me through the family saga, proving to be my true partner and greatest supporter. I could finally trust fully. We opted for a small, intimate wedding ceremony. It was just Logan, his close friends, and relatives. No one from my family was invited. Given the history of manipulation, abuse, and litigation they had subjected me to, I couldn't risk their toxic behavior overshadowing the joy of our wedding day. The stark realization of their true nature had become undeniable, and I wanted our celebration to be untouched by any negativity. A few days after our blissful union, however, I received a lengthy, guilt-laden email from my mother expressing her deep hurt over not being invited to the wedding. How she discovered the details of the event remains a mystery. My father, on the other hand, made no attempt to reach out, which was a relief. But Victoria's reaction was predictably volatile. She had always been the golden child, forever striving to win our parents' approval, never taking responsibility for her own actions, always pointing the finger at someone else. The court's decision in my favor, which resulted in a financial judgment of $210,000 against my parents, did not bankrupt them, but it did tighten their financial leeway. Spoiled throughout her life, Victoria struggled to accept this new reality. She felt entitled to the house my father owned and demanded large sums of money, but these expectations were quickly becoming her downfall. After the trial, her fiancé Jameson left her, and she reportedly suffered a miscarriage due to the stress, an event she, too, blamed on me. This blame seemed to extend to all her misfortunes. The loss of the lawsuit by my father, their financial woes, and Jameson's departure, all were somehow seen as my fault. The situation escalated unexpectedly about a month into our marriage. Logan and I, relishing our newfound peace away from family drama, decided to take a leisurely walk in our neighborhood. It was a calm, refreshing day until we saw Victoria. She was standing at the corner of a street, her gaze intense and full of anger. Confused and startled, I confronted her, asking what she was doing there. Before I could make sense of the situation, she charged at me, wielding a heavy iron rod, likely picked up from a nearby construction site. My heart raced as she swung it at my abdomen with such force that pain shot through me instantly, fiery and sharp. As I doubled over in agony, Victoria didn't stop. She swung the rod again, this time striking my shin, causing a sickening crack as I collapsed onto the sidewalk. Amidst her relentless accusations, blaming me for our father's financial ruin and for everything that went wrong in her life, including Jameson leaving her, I struggled to stand and defend myself, but my body wouldn't cooperate. Lying there, injured and in shock, I realized just how deeply the seeds of resentment were sown in Victoria's heart. This violent encounter was the culmination of years of familial discord, a stark reminder of the long and painful history that had led us here. As I lay injured on the sidewalk, the cacophony of voices grew louder, and I could hear the hurried footsteps of people rushing toward me. Someone restrained Victoria and pulled her away, but my consciousness was slipping, blurred by pain and shock. When I finally regained awareness, I found myself in a hospital bed with Logan sitting beside me, his face etched with worry and his eyes brimming with tears. Attempting to speak, I realized how dry my throat was and felt a sharp sting with every breath due to my injuries. Logan, holding my hand tightly, asked quietly, "Are you okay?" Though I murmured a weak, "I'm okay," the truth was far from it. The doctor informed me that I had sustained multiple broken ribs, a fractured left leg, and a broken right arm. It was a miracle I had survived. Without the timely intervention of the bystanders, Victoria's attack could have been fatal. She was arrested at the scene and taken into custody while I was rushed to the hospital. During my recovery, Logan was an unwavering presence by my side. He handled everything: police reports, insurance paperwork, and even contacting a lawyer as we prepared for the impending trial. Victoria was facing serious charges of assault with a deadly weapon, and given the severity of my injuries, she was potentially looking at a substantial prison sentence. Logan explained to me that after being abandoned by Jameson, Victoria had spiraled into severe depression. According to the police report, she refused to accept any personal responsibility, instead placing all the blame on me. During her police interrogation, she expressed no regret for her actions, insisting that I had ruined her life and deserved what happened. She held a firm belief that she was seeking justice for the wrongs she felt were caused by me, including her fiancé leaving her and her father's financial issues. My hospital stay was prolonged and painful. The days were filled with relentless medical examinations, physical therapy, and the heavy burden of the upcoming trial. I couldn't walk for weeks, and even upon discharge, I relied heavily on crutches and needed significant support for my arm. Doctors warned that my recovery might take months and that there was a possibility I might never regain full functionality. When the trial against Victoria commenced, she pleaded not guilty, maintaining that her actions were justified due to the extreme mental distress she claimed to have been experiencing. Her defense argued that the breakdown of family relationships had severely destabilized her. However, the evidence against her was overwhelming. Eyewitness accounts from the day of the attack confirmed she had assaulted me with clear intent, and the prosecution presented detailed medical reports of my injuries along with police statements about her premeditated actions. Sitting in the courtroom, watching my sister attempt to justify her assault was an excruciating experience. Throughout the trial, she avoided any eye contact with me, acting as if I no longer existed. This dismissal was perhaps more painful than the physical injuries she had inflicted, a stark reminder of the deep familial fractures that had led to such a devastating confrontation. Perhaps the most harrowing part of the trial was watching my parents sit in the courtroom next to Victoria, nodding in agreement every time she claimed that I had destroyed her life. Each nod was like a knife twisting in my heart, a stark betrayal as they continued to side with her, unwavering in their belief that she was the victim. This reinforced the painful reality that their support for her had never faltered. The trial stretched on for several weeks, but the verdict seemed almost preordained due to the overwhelming evidence against Victoria. Ultimately, she was convicted on serious assault charges and sentenced to 4 years in prison, with the possibility of parole in 3. By the time the verdict was delivered, the outcome didn't change the stark truth I had come to accept. I was effectively without a family. This entire ordeal crystallized the painful realization that those who were supposed to be closest to me were not truly my family. Through it all, Logan's presence has been my cornerstone. He has stood by me unwaveringly, facing each challenge head-on and providing steadfast support. Together, we are focused on moving forward and rebuilding our lives positively. Physically and mentally, the road to recovery is gradual. I am healing slowly, attending therapy regularly to work through the trauma of past events. It's a lengthy process with ups and downs. There are days when I feel significant improvement and can appreciate the progress I've made, but there are also days when the journey seems daunting and the person staring back at me from the mirror seems like a stranger. Looking ahead, I can't predict everything the future holds, but I've resolved to cherish each day and take it as it comes. Now, more than ever, I understand the importance of trust and know clearly who I can count on. With this newfound clarity and Logan's unwavering support, I am slowly piecing together a brighter, more hopeful future.